Hi guys, Dr. Rob Barrington here with some more nutrition advice. I wanted to do a quick video on a comparison between the biological effects of ergocalciferol and cholecalciferol. Now, ergocalciferol is vitamin D2 and cholecalciferol is vitamin D3. Now, the reason I wanted to do this is because I've done a few videos on the usefulness of mushrooms as a source of vitamin D. Mushrooms provide vitamin D2, ergocalciferol, and I wanted to just illustrate the interactions in the blood between vitamin D2 and vitamin D3, particularly when you supplement with vitamin D2. If you went to get a prescription for vitamin D2 from your doctor, it would be in the vitamin D2 form. The medical supply of vitamin D comes from ergocalciferol, and many multivitamins also contain ergocalciferol, and mushrooms do as well. So there is a reason to discuss this. Ergocalciferol is a common supplement, and it's a common food source of vitamin D. So this has some real world applications. Most people that go and get vitamin D supplements when they're not in a multivitamin, when they're just supplements on their own, they tend to get vitamin D3. That's how most vitamin D supplements are sold. But if you look at multivitamins, they do quite often have ergocalciferol, vitamin D2 in them. So it's interesting to understand the interactions. So if we bring up the first graph, this is a paper that looked at the feeding of subjects with one of three treatments. Firstly, there was a supplement group that took in a supplement of ergocalciferol, and they took about 28 micrograms of vitamin D per day. There was two mushroom groups. One of the mushroom groups were fed mushrooms that were UV treated, and they took in 8.8 micrograms per day of vitamin D2. And the other mushroom group took UV treated mushrooms that provided just over 17 micrograms per day of vitamin D2. And if we have a look at this graph, what we see is that the control group, which are the black circles along the bottom, they didn't have any increase in their vitamin D2 levels, and that was because they took a placebo, they took no vitamin D, and so therefore you wouldn't expect them to have any change in their vitamin D levels. And these vitamin D levels are measured as the active biometabolite of vitamin D, which is 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D, and because it was, and this first graph is actually measuring the 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2 levels. So that's an important thing to understand, because when I bring in the second graph, this will be explained. If we have a look at the supplement group, the white circles, they had the largest increase in vitamin D2 level in their 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2 levels, and that would be expected because the supplements provided the largest amount of vitamin D. Interestingly, the mushroom groups, which are the triangle groups, M1 and M2, they actually had the same response, despite the fact that the mushrooms provided, in one case, almost twice the amount of vitamin D as the other group. So that's interesting. There might be some aspect of the way it's absorbed from the mushrooms, but clearly the vitamin D from the mushrooms, both groups responded in the same way, despite them having quite a difference in the amount of vitamin D that they actually had in the mushrooms. So that graph, very interesting. It's very much expected. The group that took the most vitamin D got the largest increase in 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2. Mushrooms are a good source of vitamin D, and therefore they increased 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2 as expected, and the control group that didn't take any vitamin D had no change in their 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2 levels. So that was very expected. But if I bring up this other graph, this is now the graph that shows the 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3 levels. Now, they weren't supplemented with any vitamin D3, so this 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3 is the residual amount of vitamin D3 that they have in their plasma, either from their own production in the skin or from what else was present in the diet. So this is kind of a baseline level of 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3. And what we actually see is a decrease in the vitamin D3 levels as we got a reciprocal increase in the vitamin D2 levels. So the control group, again, it had no change in its 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3 levels. They're the black circles. The mushroom groups, again, no real difference between the effects, but they both had a decrease in their 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3 levels. And the supplement group, the group that had the most vitamin D2 in the study, had the largest decrease in their 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3 levels, and that's the white circles. So what we're actually saying here, and this is what the paper pointed out, is that when you increase your ergocalciferol intake, that causes an increase in the 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2 levels in the blood, which is good because that means that your vitamin D vitamin D status is improving. But the increase in the ergocalciferol, the increase in the 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2, comes at the expense of 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3. So what happens overall? Well, if you read the paper, what the authors discussed is that some papers have actually shown that ergocalciferol causes no overall change in your in vitamin D. In vitamin D3 vitamin D levels, because the increase in the vitamin D2 levels is to a certain extent offset by the decrease in vitamin D3 levels, and some papers have shown that this is not the case. So it's not clear exactly what is happening, and this is not happening in every study. Not all studies are showing this, and I think the difference comes from whether the subjects are initially depleted or replete in vitamin D. If you take subjects that have a deficiency of vitamin D and you give them ergocalciferol or cholecalciferol, it's going to have a benefit because it will boost their levels of vitamin D. It will increase their 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2 levels, and it won't have a negative effect on the 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3 levels. If you take somebody that is actually replete in vitamin D, what happens is you get an increase in if you take that person and you supplement with ergocalciferol, what tends to happen is you get an increase in the 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2 levels, but the 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3 levels decrease, and therefore you don't get any real change in the overall levels of vitamin D, which is interesting. And the study, what the authors actually did is I'll bring up the third graph, which shows the overall change in 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D levels as a whole. This is the total 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D, and as you can see, the control group no change, and the other groups no change. So that increase in 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D2 was offset by a decrease in 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3, and therefore in this group of subjects, the vitamin D didn't actually have any effect overall at changing the status, the total vitamin D status of the subjects. Now, the authors went on to look at whether this was an effect of the ergocalciferol on the excretion of vitamin D3, or whether it was an effect on the production of vitamin D3. First of all, they looked at the amount of 2,4-hydroxyvitamin D in the plasma. Now, when vitamin D3 is metabolized, it's metabolized through a step that causes 2,4-hydroxylation. It's one of the metabolizing steps in the excretion of vitamin D3. But they didn't find really any change in the 2,5-hydroxylation as a result of taking ergocalciferol. So what they concluded was that this is not this decrease in the 2,5-hydroxyvitamin D3 that you get with ergocalciferol supplementation is not caused by an increase in the excretion rate of the vitamin D3. So what they concluded is that it's very likely that there is some kind of inhibition at the 2,5-hydroxylation step, which is what creates this biologically active phase of vitamin D. The 2,5-hydroxy vitamin D3 and vitamin D2 it's a hydroxylation step that occurs in the liver. there is a 2,5-hydroxylase enzyme, and what they think is perhaps happening is that when you take high amounts of ergocalciferol, there is competition for that 2,5-hydroxylase enzyme. So you get an increase. The ergocalciferol causes an increase in the 2,5-hydroxy vitamin D2, but that use of the enzyme actually inhibits the conversion of vitamin D3 to 2,5-hydroxy vitamin D3, and therefore 2,5-hydroxy vitamin D3 levels fall. So it's a very interesting paper. There is this inhibition, possible inhibition, when you take high amounts of ergocalciferol for cholecalciferol, for the active metabolite of cholecalciferol. It's not really understood what effect this has. Certainly, it's clearly, there clearly is an effect, and whether it would have any long-term implications on the health of the individual, it's very difficult to say. What we do know is that if you're very deplete in vitamin D, both forms of vitamin D are effective at improving your health and improving your 2,5-hydroxy vitamin D status. Whether this would actually have a detrimental effect if you had a reasonably high level of vitamin D in your system, you had a good 2,5-hydroxy vitamin D3 levels. Whether if you took high amounts of supplements of ergocalciferol that would have a negative effect, it's not fully understood. And this is one of the reasons that I've always said, if you can, the best way to get your vitamin D is the way that we produce it in our skin, which is in the which is in the vitamin D3 form, which will then form the 2,5-hydroxy vitamin D3. It's the human form of vitamin D. It's the best, most biologically active form. There are differences in the bioactivity of these two forms of vitamin D as well. There has been measurements in cell culture studies, in animal studies, in human studies about the different biological activities of these two compounds, and vitamin D3 is more biologically active. An exact figure's not been put on it, but if you had to give a ballpark figure, ergocalciferol, the vitamin D2 form, seems to be about 80% as effective biologically as the cholecalciferol vitamin D3 form. So if you go for supplements, the vitamin D3 form is the one to go for. However, if you take and you decide to use mushrooms as a source of vitamin D, you don't have that choice because mushrooms only produce ergocalciferol. So, what the outcome of this is, it's very difficult to say. There are ongoing studies in this area, and I think the picture will become clearer as more research is published. But it's certainly one to keep an eye on, and it's certainly one to take into account when you choose your form of vitamin D. So I hope you found that interesting. As always, eat well, stay healthy, and protect yourself. And I will see you soon for another video. Take care.